For the next hour, you belong to us. We'll bring you the very best in hand-picked, unsigned rock and metal. Don't worry, you're in safe hands. We are Toolbox.
Perfume on your future, my hand in your face. Listen to the Toolbox show. This is the place. Toolbox. Toolbox. Toolbox.
I'm going to start this show off by saying happy birthday to he who must be obeyed. He whose patient and most lovely wife has to deal with his old pair of pants every time the show goes out and he has to get a fresh pair. He who spent the last week and a half, 2 weeks, baffling the medical trade in Gloucester, and who for the last half a century has been baffling science, and will no doubt be baffling science for the next half century. I'm going to dedicate the first song of the show to you, mate. This is where we would be without you. Lost in the Dark. You know who this is. Happy birthday.
I thought my road was so clear.
Broken reflected of your tears.
I've been losing the path of my fears.
The door that's called you welcome to my ears.
I will find it all. Part of me wanting to believe. Slowly to go. You will not see more than
Yes, that was Metaprism with Lost in the Dark. That was to say happy birthday to Vinny. I know he's a big fan of Metaprism. And you guys can all say happy birthday to him this weekend at the gig at the Cavern, which is situated in the Angel Hotel in Colford. I went through as many of the lineup last week as I could, which left me 2 bands to play for you for this week. There was one slight adjustment to that, which means I'm now playing 3 bands for you this week, in that Godkiller have parted ways with their singer, so they will not be able to attend. It also means they're looking for a new singer, so if you fancy taking that role on, get hold of them on Facebook. If you're a really good singer, tell them that Jasper sent you along. If you're not quite so good, just don't mention it. Wing that, tell them you found it through their Facebook page. Thank you. The replacement for Godkiller are a pair of guys that we saw at the Lower George. I'm going to say a couple of guys, I actually mean 2 fellas. They're a 2-piece band. They use a drumming track on their laptop, and then you have Johnny on guitars and Adam on bass. They call themselves Incursion. If you want to check them out on Facebook, they are tagged on the 2 Bucks page somewhere. Otherwise you can just type in Incursion-metal and they'll come up that way. So, as they're only guitar and bass drum track, don't expect any vocals, but what I will say is do interact with them, because they're quite happy to chat when they're not playing, and sometimes when they are playing, just to keep the crowd going. Luckily for you, I've managed to find a track. It is on SoundCloud, so I had to rip that, but I'm sure they won't mind. So this is what you can expect from our replacements for Godkiller. This is Incursion, Enemy of the Dead. Fierce stuff there. That's Incursion. They're taking the place of Godkiller on Saturday. Make them feel welcome, and don't forget, the more interaction you have with them, the better off everyone will be. What a way to start an evening. Now, the other two bands that I couldn't play tracks from last week were Void and Evyltyde. And now we can play tracks from those. So we'll start with Void. There's not a huge amount on their Facebook page to tell you about them, but I'm sure as time passes we'll learn more about them as we go along. What I can tell you about them is who they are. They are Wayne Doyle, he's the singer and rhythm guitarist. Andrew Kowalik is on lead guitar. Wayne Esmond is on bass and backing vocals. And Gary Doyle is their man at the back, keeping them all together. I can also tell you that they do have 3 albums released at the moment, and this is the title track from album 3. This is Keep Fighting.
Are you there?
So that's Void, one of the bands that I couldn't play last week when I did the rundown of this weekend's gig at Colford. And the second band that I couldn't play for you last week were Evyltyde. Now they're in the middle of doing their second anniversary tour. I don't know where that came from. I don't actually know what an anniversary is. Anyway, let me tell you who Evyltyde are. I'll play you a track. And I'll tell you where else you can go and see them if you so desire. They are Hannah Delaney on vocals, Danny Merton on guitar, Russ the Bear Walk on bass, and Isaac Marks on drums. This is one of their singles called Skin Deep, and afterwards I'll tell you where you can see them after they've been to Colford.
Reflections are on let's get deep. Picture paints 1,000 words, none of them are spoken. All the words just hollow shells, all the life is broken. Gazing eyes are blind to feelings born below. Hidden by a sullen shroud, secrets that I know. Don't believe what you see. Search inside for the real me. Trapped by the chains I am weak. Reflections are only skin deep.
Oh, the gods of rock are spoiling us. That's going to be one hell of a gig. So those are the three bands that you're going to be seeing that I didn't play last week in the show. So if you want to hear the whole lot, you can play the two shows together. Last week's show's up on YouTube. Right now I told you that I'd tell you where you could see Evyltyde play if you fancy going and see them play somewhere else. After this weekend, you can see them on October the 24th in Sheffield at South Sea Live. They're on with Codex Alimentarius. Then you have to wait till after Christmas. 5th of February, they're up in Glasgow at the O2 ABC2. On the 6th of February, they're at the O2 Academy in Newcastle. On the 7th, they're at the O2 Academy 2 in Sheffield. On the 11th of February, they're at the O2 Academy in Liverpool. And on the 20th of February, they're at the O2 Academy 2 in London. Now, another gig that Incursion are involved with is at the Dragonfly at Halloween. They'll be playing that along with another two of our Two Bucks bands, Beneath the Divine and Nycosia. They're taking off big style.
This is Rose, manager of Nycosia, on 2 Bucks Radio.
Yeah, okay, I'm going to play them now. Settle down, Petal. Right, let's have a track from Nycosia and a track from Beneath the Divine. Now, this is Nycosia's first decent demo. Bearing in mind what a young band they are and how difficult it is to get them all into one place at one time. It's a bit like herding cats, what with exams and schoolwork and holidays and all that sort of stuff going on. But they did manage to all get together in one place to record this. It's a demo of what I expect will be their first single. It's called Mind of a Hermit.
What's the ground? What's the
there you go. That is Nycosia. It's the first recording that they've done. That's not bad at all for a demo. It's really quite impressive. Now, the other band that you'll be able to see at the Dragonfly at Halloween, as well as Incursion and Nycosia, are Beneath the Divine. Their EP, Disciple, was very, very well received when it was released. As much as I love that, they have released some awesome new tracks. I'm going to play one of those now. This one is a proper epic. It's called Broken Man.
Now I'm afraid.
There you go then, that's Beneath the Divine. That's 2 gigs I've told you about. Finished off from last week, the Colford gig this weekend at the Cavern Angel Hotel in Colford. And now you know that we have Incursion, Nycosia and Beneath the Divine all playing at the Dragonfly in Pontypool for Halloween. Right, I've done a load of talking. Quite enough, I think, for this show. Well, for the moment, anyway. So, it's over to you guys. And this week's guest presenter. Who's it this week? Oh, you'll know within 30 seconds. It's time for our guest presenter with their track of the week. So please welcome this week's guest presenter with their current favourite unsigned song.
Hi, this is Jeff. I would like to introduce as my guest band this week, Show of Hands, with the song Roots.
And that's how easy that is. That's all I need from you guys. If you want to do a little bit about the band themselves, you can. You don't have to, because I can do that for you. You just tell me who you want played. The Show of Hands do a very acoustic, folk, rocky type stuff. It's really good. I have to say, I was very surprised when I heard this track, and I'll certainly be looking out for some more of their stuff. Show of Hands themselves are Phil Beer and Steve Knightley. And if you check out their Facebook page, there is a free album download available on there. And I will be availing myself of that, I can tell you. Anyway, this is the track that Jeff's asked for, in the interest of keeping you entertained and introduced to new music. They are Show of Hands, and this has a proper message to it. It's called Roots.
It's been 25 years or more I've roamed this land from shore to shore, from Tyne to Tamar, 7 to 10s, from moor to vale, from peak to fen. Played in cafes and pubs and bars, I've stood in the street with my old guitar. But I'd be richer than all the rest if I had a pound for each request. But Julian Banjo's American Pie, it's enough to make you cry. Rule Britannia or Swing Low are they the only songs the English know. Seed, bud, flower, fruit, they're never gonna grow without their roots. Branch, stem, shoots, they need roots. After the speeches, when the cake's been cut, the disco's over and the bar is shut. At christening, birthday, wedding or wake, what can we sing until the morning breaks? When the Indian, Asians, Afro Celts, it's in their blood below the belt. They're playing and dancing all night long. So what have they got right that we've got wrong? Seed, bud, flower, fruit, never gonna grow without their roots. Branch, stem, shell, we need roots and all the way, boys, let them go. Out in the wind and the rain and snow, we've lost more than we let know. On the rocky shores of England, all the way, boys, let them go. Out in the wind and the rain and snow, we've lost more than we let know. On the rocky shores of England. And a minister said his vision of hell is 3 folk singers in a pub near Wells. Well, I've got a vision of urban sprawl. It's pubs where no one ever sings at all, and everyone stares at a great big screen. Overpaid soccer stars, prancing teams, Australian soap, American rap, S3 English baseball caps. And we ought to be ashamed before we walk of the way we look and the way we talk. Without our stories or our songs, how will we know where we come from? I've lost St. George in the Union Jack. That's my flag too and I want it back. Seed, bud, flower, fruit, never gonna grow without their roots. Branch, stem,
Well, I'm pretty lucky I don't live in a flat, to be honest. I was stamping away with that and cheering and banging, and it's just awesome. It was Jeff Sparks' guest band for this week, in what I hope hasn't been a futile attempt to get you guys to listen to some culture. No, I don't mean that, obviously. You're a well-cultured lot, aren't you, all of you? That was Show of Hands, with a brilliant track called Roots. Certainly makes you think. Now, things have been a little bit quiet on the Apherium front recently. The reason for that is that they're working on some new material. Mark sent me a link to their new stuff. It's really good. Unfortunately, I'm not allowed to play any of it yet. But next year, just after Christmas, I can guarantee you're going to be very impressed. The guys put on a fantastic show and they came down to play for us at the Lower George. I'm assuming that at some time Vinny will be getting them to come down and play at the Cavern. I certainly hope so. But I also know the logistics sometimes aren't as easy as we make them sound. Still, doesn't mean I can't play them on the show, does it? So, this is a track from their Neoteric EP. This is Shadows.
Do you still have hope?
That's Apherium. It's a track from their EP Neoteric called Shadows. One of my favourite tracks. They played an amazing set at the Lower George when they came up to play for us there. There were people walking across the stage on chairs. I think we sold out of all the EPs, 90% of their t-shirts. And their previous album, that sold really well as well. We've had some awesome 2 Bucks bands on the show so far. We've had a little bit of an interlude from Jeff with his acoustic folk rock band there, which were awesome. Let's have a show of hands for show of hands. So now it's my turn. I'm going to introduce my guest band. They're a band that I've been playing on my Heads Up show for a little while now. I should have introduced them to you before. I might have done, but I can't remember. So just to make sure they haven't slipped through the net, I'm going to introduce them again this week. They're from Derby, and they're called Doomsday Outlaw. And Doomsday Outlaw are Phil on vocals, Steve and Gavin on guitars, Indy on bass, and John on drums. The track I'm going to play is from their album Black River. It's called Bed of Lies. While it's playing, go and find them on Facebook. So that's my guest band for this week. They're from Derby, they're called Doomsday Outlaw. That's a track from their album Black River. It's called Bed of Lies. Need to see them play that live. Right, that's all we got time for this week. I'm going to play you out this week with a band that I wanted to see play live last time but couldn't make it down to the gig. This is Two Marks and a Frank with a track called Roy. So, until next week.
Carry on, everybody. You've all done very well.
To nuzzle your face into my hair and tell me all your hopes and dreams. Press 1.
My maid Roy, he got a head full of toys. You give him a problem, and he can solve them.
Meticulous, methodical, he's always thinking logical. He's glorious to all of us, but tested on laborious. Methodical, meticulous, verging on meticulous. Systematic, autocratic, moving up to bureaucratic.
The ramifications, his expectations. He was good in school, but treated like a fool.
Meticulous, methodical, always thinking logical. He's glorious to all of us, but tested on laborious. Methodical, meticulous, verging on ridiculous. Systematic, autocratic, moving up the bureaucratic.
To quantify your love, enter the amount of love you have for me on the keypad.